Joining me now is Republican Senator Bill Cassidy, who was part of the group at the White House, that bipartisan group, on what was initially quite the celebratory day. Senator Cassidy, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck.
So let me start with the president's statement yesterday. Is the deal still in jeopardy, or was that enough to calm the waters?
I sure hope it's enough. It's a great deal. It is actually going to provide the infrastructure that the American people want, that they need, that will make our country more prosperous for all Americans. So I hope it's enough. We'll see going forward, but I'll continue to work for the bill. I
was just going to say, it sounds like it's enough for you. You know, there's a little bit of to quote Casablanca, are Republicans really shocked that the Democrats were going to pursue their own bill? I mean, you've stated it quite clearly. You knew exactly what the situation was. What makes tying them together somehow more fraught for some than if it's, back to back the way it's likely to be?
First, we were assured that the two would not be linked. Yes, the human infrastructure, if you will, as they call it, would be pursued, but the two would not be linked. Why is that important? First, there's bipartisan opposition to the non-hard infrastructure portion of their bill. Bipartisan in both chambers. That's number one. Number two, Republicans think that portion is bad for our country. We have an inflation rate that is higher than it's been in quite some time, and that bill would make it higher. So we don't want to be party of something that might coerce the passage. And lastly, it'll probably sink both. This infrastructure bill is good for America, for all Americans. It is going to make us more productive. It's going to create lots of jobs. If you sink both, we lose the advantage of that which is in our hand, which is this infrastructure bill.
Considering the infrastructure problems we still see, and there's some experts who say as good as this bill is, the problems we face in this country of rebuilding our roads and bridges and adding some 21st century technology, that this bill still isn't enough. Do you accept that criticism?
First, CBO, I'm told, estimates that the most we can absorb per year is about $70 billion in infrastructure spending, hard infrastructure, roads, bridges, et cetera, before, it becomes a little wasteful. That's the capacity we have. We kind of get there. We're close to what we say is the maximum. But by the way, we go further. We also have $47 billion for resiliency. I was discussing this with the White House. I said, does that include things like coastal restoration and working in rivers to make sure they don't flood as much? They said that's absolutely what we're thinking of. So I'd also argue that not only do we have the roads and the bridges and the tunnels, but we also have the other infrastructure which will protect those roads and bridges and tunnels. There's a lot here to like. It's a good bill.
What's your case to some skeptical Republicans who, on one hand, I think want to go home and say, hey, I did get some work done. I was able to secure funding for this bridge over here or this restoration project over there. But somehow the political chattering class tells them, hey, you're going to give Joe Biden a win, right? Because you're supporting a bill he supports. And I know we're so politically cynical in this town, but sadly, there's quite a few senators that stick their finger in the wind with the political base and make a decision on it. How do you walk that line? What's your message to those Republican senators?
If you go home and talk to constituents who are stuck in traffic for an hour and a half getting to work and an hour and a half getting home, 3 hours a day that they don't spend with their family, they want a bridge coming to a town near them. My wife says that roads and bridges are a woman's problem, if you will, because oftentimes it is the woman, aside from commuting to work, who's also taking children to school or doing the shopping. And the more time she spends on that road, the less time she spends doing things of higher value. So if you speak to her, she's going to say, this is a good bill. Lastly, I will say, if you speak to communities which have flooded, which have been endangered, you just spoke about hurricanes striking Miami. My coastline in Louisiana has been melting away. If you speak to those communities, they really like the resiliency piece. If you put your finger up in the air, you're going to feel a breeze blowing in favor of this bill.
Senator Mitch McConnell, we know that that if he doesn't like something, he can convince probably more than 40 Republicans to vote no. how much are you consulting with him, and is he still comfortable with where this deal's going, even if he doesn't personally support it?
Hey, Mitch has been, if we can pull this off, I think Mitch will favor it. Now, he didn't like the president throwing the wrench in there, saying, listen, the two are tied together. That's not what we were told. And so, of course, that caused a little bit of a, let's think about this. But I think Mitch McConnell wants infrastructure as much as anyone else. He wants the jobs that this will create. I think Leader McConnell will be for it if it continues to come together as it is.
I've got to ask you, the former president is on what some have deemed a revenge tour. He's basically trying to go after people that either voted to impeach him or voted to convict him. How much does that concern you politically?
It doesn't concern me at all. There's a scripture, let the day's own troubles be sufficient for the day. If Republicans focus on doing what is right, if they focus on that woman's issue, as my wife calls it, the roads and the bridges, the protection of our coastline, the decrease of the risk of wildfires and floods, future politics will take care of themselves. Good policy is good politics. Let's stick to the good policy, and this is good policy.
Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana, and part of this bipartisan group trying to strike this deal. Thanks for coming on and sharing your perspective.